Okay, we're in the Josh versus Daniel fight in Strikeforce. This is one of the most beautiful single leg takedowns that I can find in MMA. It's perfect, it's very basic technique, but done so exceptionally well that nothing can really stop it. There's a lot of conversation in MMA that single legs don't work. They do. It just has to be done right. Okay, so um, here we've got Josh attacking Daniel. Josh is going to throw a kind of a hook to the head and just throw himself in too far. Daniel is going to change levels and he's going to allow Josh to throw himself into being captured. Boom. So he doesn't really shoot forward, basically just drops his weight and he just grabs around the back of the knee. He's got his palm hooked in from his right hand and then he just puts his left palm on top of that. He sucks that knee towards him and he puts his weight into the hip of Josh's. So he's done a great job here. Josh, I think, is used to being so big and strong that he normally just blocks this with his hips. So normally, I've seen him do it in competition. He would literally just straighten his leg and boost his hips forward, and that would be game over. But Daniel's a bit of a different animal than that. Josh knows that the cage is within grasp, and Daniel really doesn't mind him getting his back to his cage. It'll slow things down if he gets his back to the cage, stop him hopping about, and it'll mean that Daniel can get on with his work. Josh, on the other hand, thinks if he can get his back to the cage, that he can stay up and be safe. So I don't know if Josh hops there. I don't know if Daniel puts him there. I think it's a bit of both. Looks a bit like Daniel's driving him in that direction. Josh manages to keep his balance. I think there's a slight attempt at a cut through single leg here, where he puts his weight on the chest and throws that leg past his body. I think there's a slight attempt at it. I think it's not very strong and powerful. He's not really close enough to the body for it to be effective, and I think the kind of weak underhook is stopping him doing that. So we can see him make an attempt at some kind of cut through single. Doesn't work. Okay, and Josh manages to pivot his hips. He's gonna throw himself against the cage, and part of the problem here that he does throw himself against the cage. So he bounces on the cage. All right, this is all good and going great for Josh. Now he's got something holding him up. Well, Daniel's got this leg perfectly. He's got his shoulder in on the hip and he's got a fantastic grip on the back of the knee. Now what he's going to do is he's going to step his foot into the centre of the control zone. This means that he has an opportunity to either lift or pivot from that foot. So, and one of the side effects of that foot being in place is that when this foot is dragged past it, it will catch on it. Now, I don't know if that's a planned thing. It possibly is, knowing how good these guys are. But I'm not sure. But he's going to place this foot down, and then he's going to pivot this other foot out 90 degrees to here. All right. So that's his first step. So he's going to start his momentum. So as he throws this around, he's going to follow that throw of that leg and that hip, and he's going to bring that shoulder around, which is going to rip Josh's hips off the cage. So we can see him ripping the hips off the cage. Now, in wrestling, sometimes we talk about a triangle of balance. So we have a balance point here and a balance point here. And what we want to do is we want to put him down in the furthest balance point from the body, and that's normally a triangle from these 2 points. So we've got the base of the triangle, and then we have the points of the triangle here. That spot there is the furthest away point for a post. So if we remove that post, or if we get there first, then that's the point where he's going to fall over. Okay, if we just move his foot here, it's going to be difficult. If we just move his foot to here, it's going to be difficult. We want to move it as far away as possible. So we want to move his body weight over this point here. So that's what Daniel's going to do. He's going to take his foot out, as I said, and he's going to stick his foot down, and he's going to start ripping the hips off the cage. Now, whether it's luck or whether it's planned, I'm not 100% sure. Looking at the stance, maybe it's planned, because this is a very wide stance. So he's pivoted his legs. Now he's going to throw himself out in the same 90-degree circle, which is going to rip the hips off and make Josh have to come in this direction. and it's all going to happen very fast. Now the shoulder is on the hips where the center of gravity is, so the center of gravity is already over this point where there is no balance. He's stopped this foot from being able to hop underneath that center of gravity, and he's probably truthfully not fast enough to get his foot underneath him in comparison to Daniel. So Daniel whips him around, and what he's going to do when he gets to the point that he's looking at the top of the triangle is he's going to pull that knee into his groin or into his belly. He's going to force his chest down into the leg. So he's going to pipe this femur. He's going to try and get the knee to his groin, try and get the top of the thigh on his chest, and try and get his shoulder into the hip. Now, if it was perfect, his ear would go onto the shoulder. His ear would go onto the hip, and he would have this completely flat against his body. It's not really necessary at this point. I think Josh is trying to push off his head here at this point, but it's a bit too late. This foot's trapped and he's going to fall over. So now what we're going to see is we're going to see Daniel fold. So he's literally going to throw his chest at the ground as though he's going to do like a hamstring stretch. So you can see him fold down. So he's pushed down on the hip as he's lifted the knee. Josh has not been fast enough to get this post under here. It's been caught by this foot, and his hips now are going towards the ground. Another beautiful thing that Daniel has done is that there's a little skip backwards as he throws his chest at the floor, and that little skip backwards just gives a little bit more momentum to the actual push to the floor. And there goes Josh to the ground. He bases out. Daniel keeps hold of the leg, keeps it up high, so there's not an instant get up from this point, so that Josh has to allow himself to go flat to his back just through momentum. As I say, it's one of the most beautiful single legs out there. It's done to one of my heroes. Daniel is one of my heroes as well, by the way. Yeah, it's an absolutely beautiful, very, very basic single leg, and it works fantastically. So maybe it's something you got to add into your game. I like it very much. If you can do it, good luck.